that from a human perspective, progress doesn't always look like progress. But God's plan of progress is different from ours. Let's go to chapter 2 of Deuteronomy, the same passage I read to you a couple of moments ago. You'll recall that they were on their way to the promised land, and they'd spent how many years in the wilderness?
40 years.
40 years in the wilderness. 40 long years in the wilderness. Why were they in the wilderness for 40 years? 4 decades. The reason was because God said, before you go into the promised land, all those individuals who had said it was an impossibility 40 years earlier, they need to die in the desert so that a generation of faith can enter into the promised land. So even though it seemed like all they were doing for 40 years was going around a mountain, something was still happening. People that didn't have faith were dying off so that a generation of faith could arise. Progress does not always look like progress to us, but God works in incredible ways to accomplish incredible things in our lives. And some of you right now, you're saying, well, I want some progress in my life, but it seems like I'm just at a standstill. It seems like some things are being delayed in my life. I can't see God at work in my life. Just because you cannot see Him at work in your life never means that God isn't working in your life. Amen? God works even when we can't see it in our lives. Let's look at a few examples of this. Let me take you back to the Old Testament just for a moment and remind you of a man in the Old Testament by the name of Joseph. When Joseph was 17 years of age, this is in the book of Genesis, God gave him a dream that he was going to be a ruler. Anyone remember that story? God gave Joseph this dream. But then, of course, his brothers heard about the dream, and they all became very jealous of him, and so they decided they wanted to kill Joseph, but instead of killing him, they actually sold him into slavery. And so Joseph, from a pit where he'd been placed, was sold into slavery, and he goes down to Potiphar's house and becomes Potiphar's slave in Egypt. And so Joseph is now in slavery. He had a dream of how God was going to use him to be a ruler, but he finds himself in a pit and in the slave of Potiphar. But Joseph does so well at Potiphar's house that Potiphar says, man, you're incredible. You're an amazing manager. I'm going to put you in charge of my entire household. And so Joseph was promoted to be the manager of this incredible Egyptian ruler, his household. But then something else happened. Potiphar's wife decided that she wanted to seduce Joseph. And Joseph refused that. And because of that, she accused him falsely of rape. And he ends up in prison. So he goes from a pit where his brothers placed him, sold into slavery, to Potiphar's house, and then he's put in prison. It was not just any prison, he was put in Pharaoh's prison. Now, what dream did Joseph have? He had a dream that he was going to be a ruler. Where does he find himself?